Howdy y'all, welcome to the 7th video in this video series. Thanks for watching. In this video I'm going to be talking about the restricted airline transport pilot certificate. I'm going to be talking about how you qualify for it and why you get it. So make sure you stick around and watch the whole video. And if you haven't already, subscribe so that you don't miss any of the other videos in this series. And if you haven't watched the other videos, please go back and watch them because you need to know about them. So for the restricted ATP, the restricted airline transport pilot certificate, the reason why you get this is because you don't exactly qualify for the airline transport pilot certificate. Now the same requirements apply where you have to have your commercial pilot certificate with your instrument rating to get the restricted ATP. But, and let me give you a little bit of background. So back in, I forget what year it was like 2008, 2009, or sometime around then, there was an airplane accident with Colgan Airways or Airlines. So the Colgan air crash, the FAA or the NTSB did a report in which they investigated the accident, and they thought that pilots in general should have more flight time. Now the two pilots in that case, they had plenty of flight time experience, but they gave recommendations to the FAA that they increase the hour requirements to be hired by the airlines, and so Congress, they passed what was called the 1,500 hour rule. That's not the official name, but that's what we call it, the 1,500 hour rule. And so to get your airline transport pilot certificate, you have to have 1,500 hours, but because it's such a big number of hours to get, Congress decided, okay, we can have a few exceptions, and so they can qualify for the restricted airline transport pilot certificate, the R-ATP. So you have to have less time, and also for the ATP you have to be 23 years old. And so for the R-ATP, the restricted ATP, you only have to be 21 years old. So if you're one of those people that, I hope to do this with my kids, one day where I get them basically to the hours they need before they even, turn 20 years old or something. They wouldn't be able to fly for the airlines until they're 23. So with the restricted ATP, you can actually get that when you're 21 years old. Now the flight time, it depends, but so let's say you're a military pilot and you're watching this. To get the restricted ATP, you only have to have 750 hours of flight time having flown in the military to qualify for the restricted ATP. If you have a bachelor's degree in aviation through an FAA-approved aviation program, you can get your restricted ATP at 1,000 hours, and that's with the bachelor's in aviation. It has to be an approved program. If you go through an approved associate's degree program, well, then your minimum number of hours will be increased to 1,250 hours. So if you weren't in the military, you don't have a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree in aviation, you can still qualify for the restricted ATP at 1,500 hours because you're younger than 23 years old. But with the bachelor's, that goes down to 1,000 hours, and with the associates, 1,250 hours. The only limitation that you have with the restricted ATP versus the ATP is you cannot be a captain at an airline. So let's say you get hired at a regional airline with at 21 years old. Well, you're going to spend at least 2 years as a first officer before you can be promoted to captain. But that's the only limitation with the restricted ATP. So, then the question becomes, all right, I'm not a military pilot, but maybe I should consider going to college for an aviation program. I've met a lot of pilots that, and this is at least when I was going through college, they're like, oh, don't get a degree in aviation, it's not worth it. Get a degree in something else, like marketing, accounting, something business, so you have something to fall back on. Well, I disagree with that. Now, I am a professor of aviation, and so maybe I'm a little biased, but I believe that this is going to be your professional career. Get a degree in aviation. In fact, I've had a lot of students, not a lot, but I've had quite a few students that for some medical reason, they were no longer medically qualified to become a pilot, but because they were going through the aviation degree program, they were able to get a degree in aviation, or get a job in aviation. Now, if you follow the other person's advice where they said, get something else you can fall back on. Well, I've seen it happen before, and it happened to myself. My bachelor's is English, my master's is in finance, and so I was flying as a corporate pilot. I got a little bit burned out, and I finished my master's in finance, and so I was like, I'm gonna go work in accounting and finance for a little bit. And so I did that, and I learned real quick, you gotta start at the bottom. And so I was like, starting at the bottom, people that, all that time I spent, learning to fly, working as a pilot, people who got degrees in accounting and finance, they've been working at it 10 years in, and they're making pretty good money, but entry level, not good pay. So, but if you have been working as a pilot and for whatever reason you lose out on your medical certificate, like you don't qualify for it anymore, you can still get jobs in aviation and make good money. Now, not as good as a professional pilot, but pretty good money. So enough to feed your family. All right, so yes, I highly recommend you go to college. I've had students, think about like, well, I'll do a really easy degree and then go through a really quick accelerated program for piloting, so that I finish my flying real quick and then I can work as a flight instructor, build up my flight time, and make it to the airlines before somebody with a degree in aviation can. That is an option, but whatever option you choose, just stick with it, and don't hop over to a different degree just because you're like, this will be faster. Because I found that whenever you take shortcuts in life, you're going to get shortcut results. So yeah, it's just do whatever you want, but if you're going to get a degree, and you pretty much need to, if you want to be, working for American, United, or Delta as an airline pilot, you're going to need a degree. Why not make it aviation? So you get the reduced ATP minimums, 1,000 hours for a bachelor's, 1,250 hours for associate. So I just think it's a good idea. Now, if you're watching this and you already have a degree, but now you're doing this as like a second career, or you finish your degree and then you decided, hey, I want to become a pilot. Okay, don't go back to college for another bachelor's just so you can get the reduced ATP minimum. Just go through normal flight school that has an accelerated program if possible, and get your your pilot certificate, flight instructor certificate. That way you can get faster, to the airlines. But if you don't have a degree, yes, then I do recommend bachelor's in aviation. It'll help you out a whole bunch. So, all right, in the next video, I'm going to be telling you about ground instructor. So make sure to stick around for that one. All right, thanks.